And that is fate.
No, it's our fate. He is the key. The key to the future, to the past.
No, absolutely not. This is not the time for a rescue mission.
Without him, we lose everything.
No, you stay the course.
We stay the course! We are dead! We are all dead!
Terminator Salvation is a franchise reboot from 2009 that was meant to launch a new trilogy by flipping the familiar story on its head. Instead of a machine going to the past to kill John Connor and destroy the future, a man goes to the future to rescue John Connor and Kyle Reese to save the past. Oh, and the man is also a machine, which the marketing team decided to spoil in the trailer.
Oh, good for you! And how was it? I hope it was f***ing good because it's useless now, isn't it?
And as you may already know, the trilogy plans didn't exactly work out. Not for this movie, and also not for the company behind it, as per usual. See, when you look at the Terminator franchise over the years, it seems to be like that monster from It Follows that eventually murders every corporation that it comes in contact with. The company behind the first movie, bankrupt. The second company, bankrupt. The third company, dissolved. The fourth company, bankrupt. The fifth company, bankrupt. Oh wait, no, the owner's billionaire dad had to step in and save it. So suffice to say, the fate of Terminator Salvation was, as expected, quite dark. It made $370 million on a $200 million budget, which may sound good at face value until you factor in the theater's cut as well as the marketing costs. And just like that, this new trilogy as well as the company behind it was dead. And it is sort of a bummer, because Terminator Salvation is by far the most worthy of all the non-Cameron movies. It's not necessarily the best, but it is the one that tried something new, instead of just recycling the old, or recycling the old at the cost of ruining the old.
No. Wait.
And there is good stuff here, like some of the post-apocalyptic visuals, and some of the action, and yeah. When it comes to the negatives here though, there's quite a long list to choose from on an individual level, but as I try to look for the largest source behind them, the main culprit for all this movie's biggest shortcomings seems to be the fact that it's a reboot. Meaning that because the movie is part of this popular thing, the filmmakers just relied on that popular thing instead of building something that can stand on its own, in terms of the characters, the narrative, in terms of the whole reason behind the movie. And so today, let's look deeper into how exactly the term reboot became poison for Terminator Salvation and how to avoid that same dark fate in your own relaunch of a popular IP. Oh, and because me touching on this franchise now means I'm also going bankrupt, I need someone to bail me out as well. But let's discuss that after first looking at the character.
One ugly motherfucker.
The way the characters here are destroyed by this being a reboot is because they aren't characters with understandable wants and motives, but rather just physical manifestations of the franchise. The new hero here, for example, is Marcus Wright, a man on death row who apparently caused some people to die, which we never get into more than that. All we get to know about him as a person in his intro is that he hates himself.
Just cut me up until there's nothing left.
And apparently seems to despise cancer patients as well.
But I'm not the only one with a death sentence, am I? You think I'm gonna cure your cancers? So that's what death tastes like.
You're a mean one.
And when Marcus then wakes up in the future, taken over by machines, where he soon runs into Kyle Reese, it doesn't get any better. He apparently is a hardened fighter with combat experience.
Point a gun at someone. You better be ready to pull the trigger.
But we never get to know why. He apparently is good with electronics and can magically fix anything from radios to cars. But we never get to know how. He apparently has to go find someone.
Have to find someone.
But we never get to know who. He apparently is a douchebag who only cares about himself, except when the movie son decides that he isn't, like when he loses two people he just met, or when he meets a woman who doesn't have cancer, at which point he immediately becomes a knight in shining armor.
Name's Marcus. You hurt?
Hey, you! Get your damn hands off!
In other words, Marcus isn't a real person with a real background and motivation, but rather whatever the movie in the moment needs him to be. He's an empty shell that gets filled with the IP. Oh, he donates his body to Cyberdyne. Well, of course, that's enough to make him interesting. It's Cyberdyne, it's Skynet. Oh, he has to go save Kyle Reese. Well, of course, that's enough to make his journey important. It's Kyle Reese, it's John Connor's dad. Oh, he decides to take a detour with this resistance fighter into her base. Well, of course he does. It's the resistance. It's John Connor. Oh, he completely forgets his own personal mission of fighting someone and instead dedicates himself fully to the first franchise side quest he runs into. Well, of course he does. This movie is called Terminator, not Marcus Wright. As another example to build on this, look at John Connor and the way he's quote-unquote built up. He arrives at a hot landing zone like a badass. He jumps into a Skynet research facility like a badass. He survives a chopper crash like a badass and takes on a T-600 like a badass. He jumps into the ocean like a... you get it.
You open up that ramp! And you tell them I need divers for a lock-in! Now!
John Connor isn't a person here. We don't get to know him as him. He's just a badass, mentally torn soldier.
Yeah.
He has a wife, but they barely even talk except when it's about exposition. He still interacts with his mom, but just a couple times and about exposition. He cares about saving Kyle Reese, but because he's supposed to. He hates machines with a deep passion, but the context for that hate isn't constructed here. It just pre-exists.
We've been at war since before either of us even existed. You tried killing my mother. You killed my father.
I'm gonna f***ing kick your f***ing ass!
So then, why should we care about him and his journey here? Well, we already know. He's John Connor, the son of Sarah Connor, the future of humanity. We care about him defeating Skynet and saving Kyle Reese because it's Terminator. You know what it is. And so the point is that regardless of the franchise your movie reboots, you still have to construct your characters within the context of the movie. John Connor in T2 is a person we get to know. He's a rebellious kid who doesn't match with his foster parents. He wants to be loved by his mom, who only knows to check him for bullet wounds when all he really needs is a hug. His whole personal journey is about finding a dad that he never had. There are people and relationships. With here, characters are what they are. A loyal soldier who's a loyal soldier. A stubborn general who's a stubborn general. A wannabe resistance fighter who's used just as a MacGuffin. A female fighter pilot who's about to get R-worded in her second scene so that the hero can save her and win her love.
I just want somebody.
A wife doctor who never does any wifing or doctoring, except at the end where she apparently performs a heart transplant in the desert. None of whom, just like our main heroes, are people here. You know, if you want John Connor's wife to be a person rather than just John Connor's wife, then you have to show us the person she is, what she wants and likes. Maybe she likes to sleep in the sun because it makes her dream of home. Maybe she likes to sit alone and learn Italian because it reminds her of her dead sister. You know, maybe she and her sister used to sit on their tablet and do a couple fun 10-minute interactive lessons every day to learn Italian together. Maybe this is how she can feel like she's still with her. It's a tiny thing, but it helps us know her that much more.
Oggi ho parlato con I soldati italiani.
Oh, and you know where this is going. If you want to learn a language yourself, the best way to do it is with Babbel. It's an easy-to-use language app that fits your daily life and teaches you through a variety of efficient and non-boring hands-on methods, which are designed by real language teachers to get you talking in just 3 weeks. Yo mismo lo usaré para mi canal en español.
And how was it?
Muy bien.
Good for you!
They're sponsoring a 60% Filmento discount with the link below, even after a lifetime subscription, so what's the language you want to learn? Check it out. The way the narrative here is destroyed by this being a reboot is because it's not a progressive narrative, but rather just a randomly generated collection of separate events. For example, since Marcus doesn't have any real motivated agency of a real person, his journey is mostly him bumping from one scene to the next. He wakes up in the future and immediately just happens to stumble into the most important person in the future.
What's your name, kid?
Kyle Reese.
Oh, well, isn't that convenient?
He fixes the radio at Kyle Reese's home and John Connor just happens to be speaking.
What the f*** are you doing?
John Connor.
Are you professional or not?
We gotta find this guy.
Convenient.
He's about to go off on his own mission when the machines happen to show up and direct him on a different mission instead. He meets the crash pilot and decides to go with her, only to be made into a prisoner of exposition. He gets rescued from the base and then heads off to rescue Kyle Reese, at which point we're nearing the end.
Holy Jesus. What the fuck?
In other words, because we're not constantly moving toward a goal, we're not really moving or progressing at all. We just get taken from one scene to the next until the third act, where we finally accomplish something by saving Kyle Reese and John Connor. And in a 2-hour movie, that's not enough. That's like going on a 4-day road trip where the first 3 days are spent adjusting the seat.
Welcome back.
Same on John Connor's side. His journey begins with him going into the Skynet research facility, where his colleagues apparently found a signal that can turn Skynet offline.
What did we find down there?
We found a solution.
And then he just kinda sits on that signal. He tests it on a water Terminator to see that it works. He tests it on a flying Terminator to see that it works. And for the remaining time, he just kinda hangs around being mentally torn and grunting in the radios and into people's faces.
Why the f*** are you walking right through?
Until Marcus at the end of the second act shows up to tell him that Kyle Reese is in Skynet's base that they're about to bomb. After which Connor then finally starts doing something, which is a major improvement, but a little too late because at this point the audience has already checked out. And so the point is that your narrative cannot be constructed with separate scenes featuring separate franchise elements. Oh look, it's Kyle Reese, it's a T-600 Terminator, that's enough for these scenes. Oh look, it's a signal that can turn off Skynet, it's another kind of Terminator, that's enough for these scenes. Oh look, it's... no. In T2, scenes are always about a larger purpose. At first, the narrative is about which Terminator can get to John Connor first. Then it's about, oh, the T-1000's gonna go for John's mom, we gotta save her. Then it's about, oh, his mom is gonna go murder the guy behind Skynet, we gotta stop her. Then it's about getting the Skynet stuff, about getting that stuff out, about getting it somewhere to destroy it. There's always something we're moving toward. The scenes aren't isolated occurrences, but instead carry a sense of progression. And you could have done the same here. Since Marcus is actually a patsy for Skynet, he could have had a personal mission that was actually planted by Skynet. We think we're overcoming obstacles to get closer to that person we're trying to find, until we finally realize that it was just a lie inserted by Skynet to make us accomplish their mission.
Oh, you are looking for your sister.
Psych!
She's not real.
Whereas with John Connor, you could have made a journey out of the signal that can turn Skynet off. First, he learns about the existence of the signal, then he has to find the location of the signal, then he has to go get the signal, and so on, so on, so on. And after doing all that work, he realizes that it was a trap set by Skynet. Oops. But which still paved a way for him to get to Skynet. Now, we'd be constantly moving towards something instead of just sitting around that something until the third act. The way the overall purpose here is destroyed by this being a reboot is because the villain side isn't specific or strong enough to create that purpose. The first step of this is that there is no one big villain here to represent the machines, to represent that fire we're trying to extinguish before it consumes us. Instead, Skynet is represented by a massive collection of franchise elements. We have all kinds of robots, from T-600s to Motornators to Waternators to Transforminators to various ships. We have the Cyberdyne Doctor from the beginning serving as the face of Skynet. We have a newly built line of T-800s serving as Skynet's new metaphorical nuclear arsenal. And to be fair, I do understand the choice to feature a collection of enemy elements. This movie is about Skynet having taken over, fair enough. But the issue is that because the movie doesn't put its eggs in one basket above all else, none of the baskets ultimately have enough for an omelette. We can't really take the T-600s too seriously because immediately we're made aware that there are T-800s coming. But at the same time, we can't really take the T-800s too seriously either because there's another kind of brand new infiltrator robot. There's a Transforminator the size of a building. It never gets destroyed. So I'm more worried about that, except that too is only in one sequence. You know, I can't really take this new human face of Skynet seriously because it just humanizes Skynet, when isn't the whole point here that Skynet isn't human? Why would it care about human things like second chances and giving verbal exposition to a human-machine hybrid? It just doesn't go together with all this other stuff.
I'm better this way.
You will not be given a second chance.
Huh?
I'm better this way.
So even with good intentions, the choice to take existing quantity over building quality just ensures that there's nothing here, nothing that compares to what we've had before, not even to the worst of it. The other half of this is that the villain side is too spread out to even make sense. The big plotline here is that the signal to turn Skynet off is actually a trap set by Skynet to destroy the Resistance.
Captain!
Yeah?
Which is a bit weird because we never see why it's necessary. We never see the Resistance putting up any resistance, because the necessary time is allocated to all this other stuff like Marcus and the T-800s and Kyle Reese. You know, if all Skynet cares about is Kyle Reese and John Connor, why does it bother with the signal trap? Why doesn't it just kill Kyle when it can? Why does it just kill Connor when it can? How does the signal trap justify not doing that? Plus, by the way, how does Skynet at this point even know about Kyle Reese and John Connor? We're still a long way from the time travel stuff, right? Maybe there is an answer, but it's never given because we're busy spending time on Marcus. Oh, and yeah, why are there two new infiltrated Terminators in the same movie anyway? Doesn't one defeat the purpose of the other?
You got any f***ing idea about, hey, it's f***ing distracting, and I'm going, what is he doing there? You understand my mind is not in the scene if you...
Point is that no matter the franchise elements, you have to build the fire that your movie is about in the movie. The T-1000 isn't a big deal because it's Skynet, but because it's a big deal. It's a very natural infiltrator. It's a physical upgrade from last time. It has a whole new form that makes it virtually indestructible. It's a raging flame that grows within this movie to a point where we are desperate to extinguish it. And it's this fire that Terminator Salvation needed to build up as well. If that fire is the new line of T-800s, then make the movie about John Connor having to stop the creation of the T-800s. If that fire is Marcus being a Terminator, then make the movie about Marcus being a Terminator and struggling not to be. If that fire is the survival of Kyle Reese, then make the movie about that instead of suddenly deciding that now it's not about that, but about something else. Overall, you can't reboot a franchise by just taking a bunch of its elements and throwing them together at face value, because all you'll have is a big bag of nothing. And if you do, if you can't use those franchise elements to build characters and narratives and antagonistic flames of your own, you may as well file for Chapter 11 right now.